Hi, good afternoon, everyone. A very, very warm welcome to our September audience with. We are delighted today that we have the amazing Theo Paphitis joining us and speaking with our Managing Director, Gordon Merrilees, sharing intimate details around how he has built his empire, probably talking a little bit about football, but also answering your questions today. So as with all of our audience with events, as you will know, we will start with an interview where Gordon and Theo will have a conversation. We'll get to know a little bit more about the work he's been doing, his areas of interest, some of his successes and failures maybe. And then we will come to the audience and ask your questions on your behalf. So I would ask you to keep typing in your questions into the chat function. We will have an opportunity to ask as many of those as we possibly can. I would like to start by giving a little bit of an introduction to Theo, and I guess it kind of comes with, he's a big enough personality, not just in the world of entrepreneurship, but through the work he's done on TV, that most people will know about many of his ventures. So what I would like to start by saying is that we are so delighted to have Theo join us. I think the majority of the people in the audience would have watched at least a few episodes of An Audience With, and have seen you on BBC Dragon's Den as well. So really excited to have this opportunity for a more detailed and intimate conversation with you. We will also be coming out to everyone for feedback at the end of the session. So we will share a QR code with you all to give us your feedback as we continue to bring more amazing entrepreneurs through to you. This event today has been brought to you by NatWest, RBS and Ulster Bank. And you can find out more about the work that we're doing to support entrepreneurs by Googling Entrepreneur Accelerator and reaching out to one of our colleagues. But it's really wonderful to have you all here. Thank you so much for joining us. Gordon, I would like to come over to you.
Thanks, Sharon, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining. It's fair to say that I'm delighted to, as always, to spend some time with Theo. We go back quite a number of years together. And we were together just recently in December when Theo spoke very kindly and supported a good friend of his and mine, Sir Tom Hunter, who's also recently done an audience with. And I will share with you just before I start Theo's first comments when we came on screen earlier is how many did Tom get in his audience, Gordon? So that competitive edge, Theo, is still there. You will see Theo pacing a little bit this morning. I'll cover that. He's actually hurt his back during the last few weeks. I think he said he kind of feels it would happen at the gym. So he's taking over, as he says, Mrs. P's living room. The camera is set up well. I can see you really well, Theo. And I do know that this afternoon's interview will be a wonderful extension of and supplement to the terrific work that you do every day, giving back and supporting entrepreneurs, Theo. It's good to have you with you, Theo. How are you feeling this morning?
A pleasure to be here, Gordon. Thank you very much for inviting me. And yes, I'm feeling absolutely great, except for this creaky blasted back. I've managed to creak, but I've shut the doors. I've had to open the windows because it is a bit warm in here. So
yeah, lucky you.
Here. So Mrs. P goes around with a vacuum cleaner, and I said to her, for the next hour and a half, whatever you do not run that vacuum cleaner on outside this door. Guess what?
Well, hopefully she keeps to that time. It's a bit, you're lucky. Glasgow's rather dull and cold, but I'm going to get straight into the questions because I know we've got a huge number of people registered and dialed in just to hear from you, Theo. So and I think for everybody, me included, the last 6 months has been incredibly challenging for us all. Theo, I'm really interested to know how you personally have coped with this, maybe even as a family during this lockdown period in particular.
Well, it's strange, but on that fateful day in March when it felt like the world was coming to an end, I remember sending the email out to all my colleagues in 400 odd shops around the United Kingdom to say, guys, shut the shops down, mothball whatever you can, and in fact, we'll be in touch, but don't come back to work tomorrow. And we had to do the same with head office. And it's the strangest feeling you could possibly have. But as all entrepreneurs have that trait in them, is you take everything very personally and the responsibility for it. And I remember sitting in my office just with my head in my hands wondering what has actually happened. But then you very quickly grab yourself by your bootstraps and say, you're in charge, you're the one that needs to lead, you need to get a grip, man. Give yourself a slap and start looking at one, the positives, if there is any, and how we're going to deal with it. The biggest comfort I got was we were all in this together. It wasn't just me and my businesses. It wasn't just my office. The whole of the United Kingdom, apart from essential workers, was heading home. And if we were in the poo, so was everybody else. So if everyone's in the poo together, there has to be opportunities. And that was the positive. And then I set myself in my office. I want to get away from the house. I can't be in the house. So I've got a shepherd's hut in the garden. I set up everything in the shepherd's hut. And that was command center for 3 months.
Goodness, that's I mean, you know, you can only imagine what you were thinking with the retail businesses and such, and we'll talk a bit about that. But a lot of what you said there really resonates. I stopped travelling. I was in London, and I literally was in London for a coffee for no more than 2 hours when everything went crazy. I managed to get home, and we closed the 12 accelerator hubs on the 19th of March. And as you said, Theo, you then start to hunker down and say, right, let's practice what we preach and teach, and put ourselves through that process. And we did very similar things and moved, you know, brought all the entrepreneurs in, but in a very digital delivery and distribution manner. Theo, just on that, looking back in the last 6 months, is there anything that you would retain and perhaps change behaviour, dare I say, forever? And maybe is there anything that you really miss that you cannot wait to get back to?
Well, I'm going to start with your last question first. Yes, I can't wait to get out there, meet people for a coffee, meet people for lunch, right? Network. You know, your entrepreneurialism is about your stock is the people you meet and know and talk to. That's your stock. And if you cut that off, no amount of Zoom calls or any other calls is going to substitute that quality time where you either break bread, share a drink, and talk generally about a number of things, not just about business. You might be talking about football, personal issues, work, whatever it is. Nothing can substitute that. So, my God, I miss that.
Me too.
Yeah, so moving on, and you know, mind you, it's done wonders for my waistline. Moving on, this pandemic has caused behavioral change that is forever. Things will never be as they were.
Yeah.
So let's get absolutely used to this.
Yep.
It's never going to be the same again. Whatever you did that was brilliant and good prior March or prior April might not be as brilliant and good going forward. Stuff that was pretty poo prior April might also not be pretty poo now. So we need to open our eyes, broaden our horizons, take a look again, refocus, re-challenge, relook at what we're doing, because people's behavior and habits have changed. The lockdown has accelerated, in my view, and I've been saying this from week one, this will change retail and digital and accelerate it by at least 5 years. We have moved 5 years in several months. in the way we adopt other practices, digital practices. We would have got there, by the way. We definitely would have got there.
I agree with that.
But we've just done it a lot quicker. Problem is, we're not particularly ready for it. We're not all ready for it. Some people are, and those that are winning. Those that aren't, get your backsides into gear. Because what you were doing before, you want to have the same comfort. So at the moment, it's the way I'm treating it in my business, and it has been said I'm being a little bit harsh. I'm not being harsh. What I'm being is acting with urgency. And I'm trying to get people to understand it's not always easy. And trying people to buy in to your urgency is not always easy. So we have to learn to do that as well a bit, but I have to learn to do that a bit better.
Yeah.
There is an urgency that you will be left behind. You need to do it today, make the changes today. You need to keep options open because nobody knows what's going to happen in a few months' time, in a few weeks' time. We could have another nationwide lockdown.
Yeah.
So you need to make the changes, you need to keep options, and you need to be agile. It is about, more so than ever before, that finger being firmly on the pulse.
Yeah. It's interesting. I said I would share some on both sides. So I don't miss the commutes. I don't miss the 4 a.m. starts. But I do miss those water cooler and coffee conversations that you talked about. And little simple things like, getting to the office, sharing ideas, asking, how would you deal with this problem? What's your take on this? That's quite hard to do. I know you can do it, but you've got to make more of an effort. That's quite hard to do. I think family's been a benefit for me. I'm on the road quite a lot, Theo. So my son Harris, who you'll get to hear about in a wee while because he's got a question for you. He's turned 14 last week. He's just gone into third year. He's just chosen his subjects. And ordinarily, I would have left Denise with that. I'd have been away, travelling away from home and wouldn't have been around to try and help. So I've been around a lot more and I've been able to get involved a lot more and help and support a lot more. So those are some of the good things that I'm going to try and maintain and remain. But I'm with you on that. And I get the whole point about digital adoption en masse. We've seen that too in our team. We've moved to a lot of event-led content, digital distribution and delivery. And there's a real need for it in times like this. And we've seen thousands of people join us to learn and work together and work from each other and learn from each other. So absolutely, all of what you said really resonates. I suppose with so many different areas of focus though on, as you've said, business, and we've said home and personal health actually as well. How did you manage your time effectively to deal with everything that was being thrown at you? I know you talked about, hunkering down, pulling yourself together in that moment, getting out the back garden in the shed, because there's been a huge challenge for the retail businesses, Theo. How did you do that?
Well, go back to personal. I mean, you're absolutely right. I had to get a regime together. I like to have a regime. I can't just sit there do what I get distracted. I'm dyslexic. I get distracted so easily. So it was important that, at 9 o'clock, I left home, said goodbye to Mrs. P, walked 40 yards to the shepherd's hut and told her I'll be home for lunch at 1:30. Amazing that. I've never been home for lunch in my life. So 1:30, I'd be home for lunch and we'd have lunch together. We have never done that.
Yeah.
So we talk about all the negatives that we've gone through. And then I'd say to her, I'll be home for 7:30 for dinner. At 7:30, I'd be home for dinner. And she'd say, how was the traffic? And we'd have dinner together. Now, these are some of the positives that have come out. And there's some other positives about lifestyle and work we'll talk about later, I'm sure. These are some of the positives. Then there's an exercise regime. So after we've had lunch, we'd go for a walk and get our exercise. And, you start doing these things. and you know, spending bit. I mean, God knows when I go to walk back to work properly, I think the dog's going to think it's been abandoned.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Ours is exactly the same.
I mean, Gladys has never been so fit. So, you know, these are just some of the nice things that have come out of this.
Yeah.
And the ability to be flexible in your working in environment. And I think for me, I don't think I will ever throw myself in as deep now. Maybe it's just an age thing. As deep. There's going to be a little bit of balance in there now. That we can do things in a slightly less stressful way, let's say.
Yeah.
So that's been a very, very key thing for me. But you do need to organise. It's so easy to be distracted in this new way of working. You know, you might not have a shepherd's hut. You might have to work in the kitchen, spare room, or bedroom, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Set yourself up. Know that even if going to work is 10 meters away, I am going to work. Yeah. Because there is so many things that are going to distract you. And especially technology, the phone goes off, my watch goes off, the house phone goes off, you know, the doorbell goes. All, you know, Mrs. is going around with a Hoover, the husband is going around with a Hoover. You know, it doesn't really, someone's going around with a Hoover. You know, the dog's barking, the dog wants to be let out. You know, all these happen, and they're fine, but we can work through it. There needs to be a regime that you stick to, and I think that for me worked absolutely brilliant, and it lasted for 3 months.
I think you've described something there that I've found personally quite a challenge. I think, and the word for me that to paraphrase what you did, is real discipline. You know, you described a lot of real good personal discipline there. A lot of the nice work-life balance, things that we've enjoyed, the family time. We've never sat at the dinner table as much as one family of 4 ever. We've never got the board games out as a family of 4 as much as we have ever. But that discipline's really important, isn't it? And that time to reflect as well. And I think I've got some views on this as well, but I'd be keen in hearing yours too. But with that, everyone looking to you in this moment as the entrepreneurial leader for direction, calmness, confidence. How did you handle that, the adversity and doubt that sometimes can come in and challenge a business, as well as us as leaders, and of course the culture that you create at times?
Well, the question I'm constantly asked is, you know, that thing about entrepreneurism and work, and I always answer it with one word: passion. If you have a passion for what you do, that gives you the drive, that gives you the focus. And that, you know, I get up in the morning, not because I need to make a few extra bob, although it's always welcome. I mean, but at the end of the year, you know, my accountant does the numbers, I pay my taxes, I get a pat on the head, boy, done good. It's a scorecard. That's not the reason I get out of bed in the morning.
No.
Because I want to do it, and I want to be successful. And I want to do better than I did before. And I'll always thrive and strive to do better. Whatever I do will never be good enough, which is a bad monkey to have on your shoulder. Because, you know, you always feel that you could do better, and you want to stretch yourself to the maximum limit of your personal abilities. Now, if I get to the maximum of my abilities, then I suppose I will have to be satisfied with that, and I'll have to give myself a pat on the head. But if I don't manage to get to the maximum of my abilities, because for the lack of want or effort or desire, then I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So actually, it's this thing about having courage in your convictions. It's very easy to have courage in your convictions. So if you actually are passionate, you really believe in what you're doing, you really love doing what you're doing, you can bore your mates in the pub talking about what you're doing, which I often have done, then you will get through that. You will lift yourself. You will have the ability to. And stay calm is a key part, even if you're inside, you know, thinking, oh heck, you know, you have to stay calm. You have to show that leadership. You have to show that confidence, because that will go in others. Whatever you do will be followed on. If you start doing a Basil Fawlty impression, believe you me, that'll go straight down the line.
Yeah. And
this pandemic is a big stress, but there's one big advantage for everybody out there who's struggling at the moment, finding it difficult. This thing has devastated so many businesses and opportunities. It's the same for everybody.
Yeah.
You haven't caused this. This is not your fault.
Yeah.
So, you know, live with it. Don't be embarrassed by it. Accept when things are not right and move on.
Yeah, I love that. I think that regular dialogue with everybody's been really important, that communication, that openness and honesty. I mean, you said something earlier that I'm very mindful of. It's not lost in me that we all work in different environments. And the fact that you're aware of that and you've recognised that, and not everybody has the garden shed or the choice of rooms or the garden itself when the sun's shining. We've come across a lot of people and in our teams who, you know, the room they're in is their bedroom, it's their living room, it's where they spend time, it's, you know, it's where they're having their coaching Zoom calls, it's where, you know, it's where they're holding their meetings digitally. That's really tough. And I think just knowing and being aware of that is really important. But that point you made about compassion as well, I think is also really important. You said some things there that really resonates with me around love what you're doing, be good at what you're doing. And the bit I would add to it is, because you said this in a different way, the world needs it, customers need it, and it can make a difference to people's lives. So that gives you that passion and belief to get up and drive those things forward. What about the team, Theo? What about the culture and how did you kind of keep the team together? Because that ain't easy, is it?
So we created a crisis team, which included a HR director, a loss prevention director, a company secretary, the directors, operation, everybody that was a crisis team was about 10 people. And that crisis team met every day shortly after the government made their whatever announcement they made. So it was about 6 o'clock, 6:30.
Yeah.
So we had that crisis meeting for an hour, 6:30, and that's where we picked up the latest news, what's happening today, what's changed, what's not changed. We discussed everything, and everybody went about their business the following day. So that's and that evening. So that was the first thing we did. So everybody took responsibility for. Then they had their own teams, obviously below them, who then had their teams below them. So it can funnel up and through, and we can make decisions. And I was absolutely taken aback how well we were able to operate. Now we were lucky. I mean, there's Zoom, there's Google Meets, there's the Microsoft Teams, you know, there's Skype. We converted, so they're all very similar functions. We went to Google about 2 years ago. So we already had the technology built in to our working practices. But guess what? We went there 2 years ago. We hardly did a Meet call or a Zoom call. We all went around the country chasing our tails. But we were forced, but technology was there, so we were very lucky. We could just use it.
Yeah.
And we're all organized. All our files were not hosted locally. They're not hosted via VPN. They're all hosted in the cloud. I have been done for 2 years. So everybody could take, you know, we did have a situation where people were stripping the offices, you know, where they had desktop computers, were taking them home, chairs, monitors, you know, you name it. You know, it was like, God knows where it's all gone. And then we had people showing us their setups, as you say, in their bedrooms, in their kitchen, whatever. And it became a community again. And we all hunkered down It was that wartime spirit. It wasn't our fault. And just when we thought things were really poo, we'd always remind ourselves that actually there's no one trying to bomb us. No one's trying to kill us from the sky. We don't have to go into an air raid shelter. Things have been a lot worse for our parents and our grandparents. All we're having to do is stay at home, adapt, which is amazing technology to keep in touch with everybody. Lots of entertainment through TV and other broadcasters. So actually, all we were having to do was we just need to stop moaning, and get on with it. And you know, our parents and grandparents had to put up with a hell of a lot worse. We have lived, my generation, your generation, Gordon, have been absolutely a privileged generation. We have lived through some of the most amazing, affluent times in the history of mankind.
And I think there's been a lot that's been brought home, I think, even more in the last few months with some of the anniversaries of VE Day. And I watched the Battle of Britain last night on TV, Theo, as well, that Ewan McGregor. I think a lot of that's been really brought home to a lot of people. I've heard you say that before, way before a pandemic. So that's been something I've heard you talk about before. But I think what you said about even the right environment for your team, the right kit, or you talked about them getting the right kit, I think that's important. Their surroundings, making sure they're comfortable, that well-being, and then, of course, the personal discipline are all really important. Is there one big lesson you've learned about yourself and the way that we work from this experience, from all that you've said?
Yes. I've learned I'm not that important. Not that I ever had any grandeur ideas about that. But what has been key for me is I've learned that I don't need to carry on worrying as much as I worried before.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm terrible at worrying. You know, has so-and-so done this properly? Has so-and-so done that? Has so-and-so done this? I mean, it's a great trait, but it's also a terrible trait.
Yeah.
And lots of entrepreneurs have this. You know, we without realizing, we want to control everything. We want to know the ins and outs of everything.
Yeah.
And actually, we don't. And that, you know, we should just allow people sometimes. And what's for me, the thought of allowing all my colleagues to work from home, if you'd have asked me that, I would have said, you're mad.
I've never been one for doing it, Theo. I have to say, I've always like you said earlier, I've always liked the work environment. So suddenly, we've had 50,000 of us working from home. So that's been quite a challenge. My entire team supporting 1,100 entrepreneurs that would have been in our physical hubs has been a real challenge. But that collaboration and connectedness, as well as other things you talked about, have been really important. We've had people in our team saying we've probably never known each other so deeply as we've learned about each other now.
Yeah. So the other thing we did, and we're talking about the crisis meeting. I sent a case of wine to all of them, right? And on the first day to their homes, and luckily they got delivered. And I thought, we're going to need this. I don't condone too much drinking, and I don't mind a glass or something, but we're going to need this. It's the world was changing. We needed to relax, needed to have a drink. We now needed to have a coffee with our teams. And the other thing we learned is that, you know, the whole team should get together, if not every day, every other day, just to have a coffee. There's no agenda. Just get a coffee, log on, chew the cud, and try and replicate some of those things that we talked about with the water cooler and so on. These are things that we learned. But the biggest learning is, if you give clear direction, you can trust people to deliver their work in their own environment. It's not easy, but people have become more and more adept, which of course goes back to one of my biggest bugbears, and I've been talking about this, not in the last 6 months, but the last 6 years. You know, government have really let us down insofar as connectivity is concerned. You know, we're talking about spending billions on high-speed HS2.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to spend billions on old technology. Technology that's hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
To transfer people from one part of the country to the other part where there's work. Well, you know what? Let people work where the children can go to great schools in green fields and the ability to have some quality of life, as long as you give them the connectivity to be able to do their job.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've been preaching forever and ever and ever and ever. And I do believe that this pandemic now has focused the mind of governments to actually get that done.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I've noticed, and so we used to talk about ecosystems being, you know, cities, regions. It's become towns and villages, and that local connectedness that you talk about, Theo, is so important. But I love the fact that you talked a bit about the leadership there and bringing a bit of fun, recognition for the team, regular check-ins, and that common goal around that direction of travel, I think, is really, really important. I'm pretty sure, you know, we've seen a lot of business models emerge for some. You've talked about that huge focus on digital adoption, and a lot of entrepreneurs having to pivot their business in at least some part of it right now. What would you say the most important things to focus on with that in mind when you're doing so?
Back to what I said earlier, the rate of change. You've just got to not accept that whatever you were doing before was going to be relevant today. I know it's hard that 6 months later you were doing something really successfully rather, and now all of a sudden you need to challenge that. That's a tough thing to do. And the ability to be agile, keep options. You really need to look around and make sure you're bang up to date. There's so much change going on. This is really the time to be reading and contemplating and trying to understand what's happening out there, and not just burying your head down and beavering away. Head down and beavering away, there's a place for it.
Yeah.
Might not be right now.
Yeah, that awareness and that reflection, but being really aware and mindful of those opportunities that exist. You've talked a lot about that, actually.
Yeah, and there is, because things are changing. There's be a lot, call it crumbs, call it whatever. I've been very happy to take crumbs off other people's tables that they weren't interested in. I promise you in the past. And I made a very good living out of it. People will be having their eye off the ball. The ball will be dropped. There'll be opportunities. There'll be change. There'll be so many things happening that you will see areas where there is an opportunity for you to actually play a part, and a profitable part in business that maybe didn't exist before. Or people were no longer doing.
Yeah, you touched. It was a really good segue there, and I want to talk a little bit about your thoughts and reflections on your journey. Some key milestones, moments of pride, maybe even moments where it was tough, and you to dig deep as you've talked about, and maybe the key lessons we can share with the audience. I'll take you back to, I was reading up on your life story, and as an entrepreneur since the age of 12, when you started the school tuck shop, to acquiring Ryman in 1995, which is a constant jewel now in your retail empire, to the most recent success, which has become Chancellor of Solent University in Southampton. What are the key moments that define you, Theo? What are the milestones or moments of pride that really stand out for you? You started to touch on a little bit of that, which is why I wanted to bring you straight to it when you talked about acquisitions. But what are the moments that define? What are the milestones or moments of pride that really stand out in that period for you?
Oh, that's a hell of a period, Gordon. I mean, that's like,
As,
that's my life. That's my whole life.
100%.
School was never a good place for me. Right? I was a first generation immigrant. I was dyslexic, so picking up the language wasn't the easiest thing in the world. Verbally, I could cope with it, but then there was the written word was a real challenge. Numbers were fine. I was always good with numbers. That was never a problem. The family was in a difficult situation. I won't bore you with it right now, but there was a few tragedies on the way, and life was not clear. It was not constant. It was ever changing, and it was very much about survival. I've always said one thing about dyslexic people is that people said to me, why do so many dyslexic people end up being entrepreneurs and good entrepreneurs? The reason is they can't get a job anywhere else. So they have to do it for themselves, because academia has never been a strong point. But more importantly, they develop traits on the way to adulthood. And those traits, what kept me going as a kid was finding workarounds around problems. My inability to deal with day-to-day school, day-to-day life, in the same way as someone else might do. My friends would power through their homework in half an hour. I'd take 2, and I still wouldn't get it right. My friends would be able to concentrate in class and take on board what the teacher was saying. I was looking out the window. I was distracted. My friends could read a question off a page and understand what was being asked of them. I didn't have a Scooby-Doo. These are all challenges that you then had to deal with, and you find workarounds. You then leave school and you find that actually those traits, those finding workarounds, solutions, are really useful in life. When you out to the real wide world, you just need someone to give you a chance to demonstrate that. So I think my biggest achievement was getting my first job. No, I'm absolutely deadly serious. I sent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of job applications in those days off. And I received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rejection letters.
Yeah. Is that Lloyd's London? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually got my first job as a T-boy filing clerk in a Lloyd's of London brokerage in London Bridge.
Yeah.
And the only reason I got the job is I'd never had a job before. The government were paying 1,500 quid to all employers that would take somebody on that's never had a job before. So I was free labor. So guess what the salary was? 1,500 quid. So I was free labor. So that was my first challenge. I could not, I was on the floor. My self-esteem, my confidence was shot to bloody pieces. And that job, the ability to be able to go to work in the morning was massive. But of course, the biggest thing about that was there was a young lady who was a receptionist in that organization who met me at the reception area and took me in for my interview. And she became my wife, Mrs. B. So I met her, so I had double whammy. Double whammy. 40 odd years later, she's still whamming me around the head when I don't do as I'm told. But you know, it was so that was a defining moment.
Yeah, exactly. Personal
and work.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what some confidence does for you. I was shit at the job, by the way. Sorry about the language, I forgot. Apologies.
That's all right.
I was really terrible. Who would give a dyslexic a job as a filing clerk? I made great tea though. I made absolutely brilliant tea. but I was useless. So
tell us a little bit about, because the skills that you talk about that you learned there, and then I guess the big, as you said, there's too many to mention from a life perspective and journey perspective, but there was your first company, Property Finance, and then you went into, you acquired a major stake in a mobile telecoms company, NAG, and that seemed to really change things, because that led to the Ryman opportunity, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it's about what I learned en route was I was very, very good at solving problems.
Yeah.
Right. And I go back to the traits that I've got and the dyslexia, and having spent all my life trying to get around life's problems. I was very good. It would never challenge me. So I was very good at going into businesses that had a problem. And I was very good at looking at it objectively, positively, and finding ways, even when I didn't know the answer. I always believed there is an answer. So all you have to do is go and look for it. There was no Google in those days.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I always believed that the answer is out there.
Yeah.
So the only thing I had to do is go and find it. How hard can that be? The biggest problem in any business environment where there's an issue is identifying what the problem is.
Yeah.
Because then you've got a chance of finding the answer. If you can't identify clearly what the problem is, you can't find a solution. So those were important to me. So the phone business, Ryman, they had problems that I didn't find overwhelming.
Yes.
I could see solutions to those problems, or was confident I could find solutions. I didn't have all the answers.
Yeah.
It's far from it. But it's about knowing where to get the answers. It's about identifying what the issues were with those businesses. But retail for me, I moved on. When I said about doing the filing clerk business and T-Boy, I was brilliant. They loved me there. Till they let me go. They couldn't find anything. But I then went into retail. So I went working for Watches of Switzerland, which was in a shop in Bond Street, and Watches of Switzerland still exists today, run by another Scotsman. And for me, that was it. I went from where I was still struggling and having to walk around with a dictionary in my pocket. I really did. Mrs. P bought me shortly after she met me. She'd worked out, that I had issues. Well, I told her, and she stopped off. There's a Ryman shop in Borough High Street, and she stopped off at Ryman, bought me a pocket dictionary.
Goodness.
And a calligraphy pen.
Yeah.
And she gave me the dictionary and the calligraphy pen and said, "There you go. Keep that in your pocket." I've still got the dictionary. She wrote inside it.
Nice.
40 odd years ago, and I taught myself to write again.
Yeah.
But retail.
But those are all really defining moments, and if you don't mind me saying, an awful lot of support along the way as well from someone who really clearly knew you well. So I think that's exactly what I think the audience are looking to hear. I'm interested in. Some would say entrepreneurship's a way of thinking, right? Some would say it's a mindset that's opportunity obsessed. It's leadership balanced. That self-motivation, Theo, that we know you for, that inquisitive nature, the problem solving, the desire to create something that can change a customer experience forever in the way that the world uses those products. As those opportunities were presented to you, post Watches of Switzerland and maybe when you opened the first Property Finance and beyond, how did you go about identifying the ones to move forward, invest resource, and maybe even funding in, and the ones not to?
Well, funding wasn't in abundance in those days. So there was very little funding. So it was very much having to work from your own resources, and to be resourceful.
Yeah.
Is another word to use. And boy, was I resourceful. So traditional finance in the way we know it now, and traditional assistance didn't really exist. You know, you either borrowed from the bank, or family or friends, if you had family or friends, or you found money elsewhere, you know, or found credit. You just, it's always has been, always will be about balancing the books at the end of the day. During the day, the books might be seriously unbalanced, as it often was for me. I just had to make sure at the end of the day, whether that was the end of the week or whether it was the end of the month, that the books were balanced.
Yeah.
That was it. So yeah, there was a lot of this going on. And I'm not saying this because you know it's true.
No, you're not. Well, I mean, know your numbers.
But I went to, I opened, after I left school, a bank account with NatWest in Notting Hill Gate. And I'm still banking with NatWest in Notting Hill Gate.
Nice.
And the manager's name was Frank Moss there. And boy, it was an old traditional bank manager. Did I lead him a merry dance? He would always drag me in. And, you know, even when it was a bit like going before the headmaster. But he was tough, firm, but always added to the experience. He'd even buy me lunch.
Yeah.
And would talk to me. And he obviously could see something.
Yeah.
But I never always delivered on what I was hoping I would deliver. But we got through it.
But what was the difference? I mean, I think this is touching on some stuff that I think you'll get. I'm not going to talk too much about Dragon's Den because I do think it will dominate a lot of your questions from the audience. But here's an interesting one in the back of what you just said. You made me think, is that because he saw something in you and believed in you, and therefore he backed the jockey rather than back the horse? You know, and is that how you look at it? Is that how you look at investments, Theo?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's exactly what he did do.
Yeah.
And I remember going way overdrawn above my limit, and him calling me in and saying, what the hell's going on? And taking me for lunch to local Italian. Obviously, he used to give your manager's expense account in those days. So obviously, he took me for lunch at the. He knew I couldn't afford to pay.
Yeah.
so he lunch at the local Italian there, where he was incredibly well known. So it's obviously his canteen. But going through everything with me, and at the end of it, do you know what? I left there I went there thinking, I'm going to get shot. It's, you know, God knows I'm going to get through this. I knew what liabilities I had coming as well.
Yeah.
But we talked it through, and then I gave him all the bad news as we went along. And, you know, we came up with a plan that involved me changing direction slightly in what I was planning to do, but also some help from him.
Yeah.
To support me. And we got through it. And those are key things. He obviously didn't give up on me, and he saw something in me, as I like to see something in other people. And I've often said, you know, a good idea with a bad person is no good to me.
Yeah.
An average idea with a really good person is good to me, because I can work with that person.
Just going back to that, you know, you work with so many entrepreneurs. We know we can't always get those decisions right all the time. How do you deal with that when it happens? And do you have an example of, that's my best investment, or is there one that got away, or is it more about, it didn't get away, I just wouldn't invest in it, and why? I think that it didn't get away. You're absolutely right. If I wanted something, I would have bid for it, right? Yeah. I mean, people ask me that, which is the one that got away. It didn't get away. I just didn't want to work with that person. I'm sure that they went on to become successful, but it wasn't for me. Yeah. I decided, you know, quite a while ago, I'll only work with people I want to work with, that I can get on with, are like-minded, and the time I'm going to invest in them is time that I think is got good use for them and for me. Yeah.
So I don't like to talk about the ones that got away. I don't talk about the ones that were great investments, because I've made some wonderful investments. But you know what? If you'd have asked me on the day,
yeah,
is this how you expect it to turn out?
yeah,
I'm not going to be arrogant enough to say, yes,
yeah,
that's exactly, it's turned out exactly as it.
yeah,
It's turned out, the result is what counts. The
yeah.
result was brilliant.
So thinking about that result then, because I agree with you, what made it so? What was the traits or the characteristics or the way the cards fell, whatever it was, what made it so?
People, the ability to identify, the ability to adapt, the ability to be agile, the passion, the hunger, the desire, all the team that are involved in the business. And it was the will to succeed with all those things thrown in.
Yeah.
And, we're not talking about things that are mind-boggling, brilliant inventions here. We're talking about day-to-day activities that many people are doing.
Yeah.
We just did them better, faster, more cost-effective.
Yeah.
And those things for me are key.
Yeah.
It is all about people. I struggle not to be with people.
So I'm really interested personally. I could ask you the question, what's the biggest lesson learned in your business life? I'm more interested in being a bit more pointed in that and ask you what's the value or values you simply will not compromise on?
Honesty.
Yeah.
I was going to say hard work, and that I would always say hard work, but I'm going to change.
That more about being always on rather than.
I think the understanding of delivery. This is something I've learned during this pandemic.
Yeah.
Right. It's for people to, coal miners work hard.
Yeah.
I mean, who wants to go down a pit and pick away at a coal face? That's hard work. What we do is not hard work. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Right. But the understanding of delivery and output. What have I done today? What have I delivered today? What's been the output of today? I might have done 12 hours, but in those 12 hours, what came out of it? Could I have got the same delivery out of 6 hours or 4 hours? But it's people who listen, want to work as a team, the honest, that understanding of delivery, and have a passion for what they do. I want to be with people that have got passion, because that just breeds energy. I don't like oxygen thieves, people who just talk for the sake of talking.
Yeah. And there's a real theme, though, of continuous learning, experimenting. You talk about the team and that feedback and support and speaking up, and I guess all of that, Theo, builds a load of trust as well. Is there a particular inspiration or role model that stands out for you?
No, because I think everyone is very, very different. I'd hate for us all to be the same. I think every day I go out, I meet new people, and I would say without exception, on my normal, forget during this present time, on my normal activities, most people I meet, I get something back out of them.
Yeah.
I learn something from them.
Yeah.
Their traits, something in them that I think, well, you know what? That's really good. That's a good trait. So,
but you're obviously open to that, and that's something that's in you, that you're mindful of.
It is, because I don't know everything. In fact, I love to learn from other people.
Yeah. That's really helpful. I'm conscious. I can see Sharon, but I know Sharon, I always say I've got the mic, and I've got one or two things I want to ask Theo, because I probably won't get the chance to do that again, Theo.
Just so you know, we're good for time. The back's holding up, so we're actually.
Yeah, good. Well, that's good. I know I can see at the moment there's 57 questions just been submitted in written form, so goodness knows how many that means. Theo, very, very quickly, and a very quick one, quick answer. I got a text from a 14-year-old, I think from the classroom, which he's going to get in trouble for, 11:18 this morning, to say, Theo, and now this is not bad for a 14-year-old, and if you met him, you'd know why, led a consortium to acquire Millwall FC, we became chairman. How did that differ from being an entrepreneur and running his own business?
It's not going to be a short answer, it's going to be flippant, because I was asked the same question.
Oh, were you?
Yes, by a newspaper reporter from The Sun. So the question he's asked, what's his name?
Oh, my boy, Harris.
Sorry?
Harris.
Harris. So Harris, your question is exactly the same question that the Sun newspaper reporter asked me on my very first press conference at Millwall Football Club in the press room, which is a big old room with chairs and everything. And they were taking pictures. I had my best suit on, I turned up, I just led a consortium to take over the club. And so I Mr. Paphitis, he says, so you're a businessman. He says, what, and you've got retail shops and property and Ryman Stationers was my main business then. He says, Ryman Stationers, so what has that got in common with running a football club?
Yeah.
So, public mistake number one, having not been trained in media in any way, form, or fashion, being a bit flippant, I turned around and said to him, well, that's obvious, brown envelopes. So, for those of you who in the modern digital environment don't know what I'm talking about out there, the audience, in the old days, brown envelope is what people used to put cash in brown envelopes and pass it on to people as an incentive and to do something. So that was called a brown envelope. Ryman sold brown envelopes, and in football, just before my period, it was absolutely a litany of allegations and newspaper articles about football managers taking bungs for doing transfer deals. So I flippantly said brown envelopes. Oh my God, guess what the headline was the following day? Oh,
Goodness.
Yeah, so I won't do that, make that mistake again. But it was a hell of a, but listen, it was football. I went into Millwall with two things: passion for football, passion for the football club, and having a reasonable record in business. What I found was it was really difficult to have a business model that was sustainable and credible in the football world. So the various adaptations that people made, when I got to the stage where that wasn't comfortable for me, then that was a time for me to call it a day as well. But football's changed tremendously in the time I was there. I got into the Football League board, the FA. I was very involved in loads of rule changes, which I believe made football a much, much better place.
Yeah. I'm conscious of time. Sharon, what I do want to make sure though at some point, because my final question for Theo was going to be about his Small Business Sunday programme of support for small businesses and how important it is to provide that support. So I do want him to talk about that. So we can just make sure we manage, it might even be in one of the questions, who knows. I do want him to talk about that because I know he's extremely passionate about it and we're extremely honoured to be involved in that programme. Yeah. Sharon, over to you.
Thanks, Gordon. You'll be happy to know, and Theo, you'll be happy to know that we have a lot of your Small Business Sunday winners actually joining the session today. So we have had questions. What I'm going to do, Theo, just for a time perspective, I've grouped the questions for you. The first one that's come to you from the audience is that you have mentioned about levelling the playing field due to the pandemic, which means that there's opportunities for everyone. Are there any particular sectors or industries that you feel are absolutely standouts for disruption?
Wow. Well,
good question.
It's a great question, and it's a question I can't answer again just in one saying. It's this: certainly services, the way people interact, receive, do. That now is it's open season. People are so adaptable now in the way that they're prepared to receive services. And things that we did in a certain way before, now can be changed. People will adopt new ways of doing those things, and actually where they have no choice because they can't do it the same way as before. And the way we did it before might not be actually that efficient anyway. So definitely services, it's open season in that area.
Brilliant, thank you. And so leading on to that same element of people being more open to receiving products and services in a different way, and that kind of closeness, what changes are you seeing in the retail industry? And a number of our Small Business Sunday winners have actually asked this question. What does it mean for them where high streets have been in decline for a number of years already? What's the future there, and what should retailers and products-based businesses be looking out for?
Well, I think we're going back to the same. This hasn't changed. This is the same as it was pre-pandemic. It's just accelerated. So people, you can now, historically, you needed 200, 300, 400 shops around the whole country to actually give a service to your customers, right? And to reach customers. Huge capital expenditure, huge infrastructure. You can now do it from the comfort of your bedroom. You don't even have to handle the stock. You can just do drop ship. By drop ship, I mean you have an arrangement with a distributor that dispatches the product for you. So you become very much a marketing arm. Or you can have a product that's distributed by somebody else. You don't need to have your own warehouse. You can have your own product. There's so many different ways now to reach your customer, whether it's through social media, whether it's through PPC, and we've discussed this at our Small Business Sunday conferences in the last two years. So it's actually a lot easier now than ever before to get going. What you do need to do, and you haven't got an open field. Other people will be doing it as well. So lots of competition. You have to do your homework. And I keep saying that, and it sounds like I'm preaching, but I just can't emphasize how important this is. You don't want to play on an even playing field with everybody else. You want to tip the advantage in your favor. And the way you're going to do that is to make sure you know more about what you're doing than the next guy or girl. And that means doing your homework on your product and making sure you're not on your services, and making sure you're not a busy fool. We can all be busy, but what do we want out of this at the end? So we can all be busy fools. That's not the aim. The aim is to be productive in what you're doing and having an advantage over other people who are competing with you.
Great, thank you, Theo. We're going to change direction slightly. We've had questions around what advice would you give to university graduates who are struggling to get their first job, where COVID has meant that there's more redundancies and job losses, and there's a recession looming. It sounds very doom and gloom. Where do students stand? What would be the advice that you would give to those guys?
Okay, I'll give them the same advice that I had to take myself all those years ago when I was sending out all my job applications. Get on with it. You might or might not get the job of your dreams. Don't worry about it. You might or might not get the opportunity of your dreams. Don't worry about it. Get in the game. You might not get the salary that you were hoping to get after spending 3 years of hard graft at university and a lot of drinking. Tough. This is the world we're in. There's going to be, we're already talking about 700,000 extra people signing on from pre-pandemic periods. And I think it's going to be a lot more in the next few months. So the answer I would give them is get on with it. Find an opportunity. It might not be the perfect opportunity. It very rarely is anyway. To be frank with you, it's like entrepreneurs. They very rarely become successful on their first trial or their first business. It's the second and third. And it's the same with jobs. When you're a youngster, when I got my filing job, I was rubbish at it. But it was a job. And I was able to use it as a platform. I was able to shine, find what I was good at, allow other people to see what I was good at. So answer is, get on with it. Don't be too picky. We all value our own self-importance, sometimes too much. And I would try, do things, get out and about. Once you're out in the workplace, you'll be surprised what you see, and how your views might be totally different to the ones that you've got today.
Thank you. So on to the next question, Theo. We have, as part of our program, we spend a lot of time speaking to entrepreneurs about getting investment ready. And over the past few years, we've seen lots of investment in tech, and there's some sectors that tend to get investment quite readily. As an investor, is there anything that you're looking at differently now, or is there another area or criteria that would be useful for entrepreneurs to know about when they're out actively getting investment?
I think when anyone ever invests in a business, it's called an investment. You expect to get something back. And historically, it was always about what the P&L said in 3 years' time, 4 years' time, 5 years' time. I think what you look at today is people are looking for other things as well. They're looking for the things we talked about earlier. How your business will be relevant in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 4 years' time. So you might not be able to deliver great profits in the short term. But how relevant is your business going forward? And I think that's the big question that I ask myself that on a daily basis. Because my businesses are, old industries. It's retail, bricks and mortar retail, though we have a very strong e-commerce side now. But we invested in that. But, I constantly ask, how relevant am I going to be? Forget how much money I'm making. I could be making a fortune today, but if in 3 years' time I'm going to go to zero, then it's not a great business to invest in. So relevance. Think about relevance.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's fantastic. Thinking about your businesses that you've built, is there any business that you would love to relaunch today? And is there anything you would do differently with that?
Well, obviously I would do everything different because things have changed. Would to relaunch today? No, because I never look back. I've enjoyed my experiences. I've learned from my experiences. They've molded me to who I am today, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, you could take two identical Theos from the age of 6, put them through different experiences, and you'll get two very different people. So I don't sit back and wonder what if, because actually all the things, the good, the bad, and the ugly that happened to me, or of course to myself during that period, made me who I am today, and made me appreciate the things that I appreciate today and have the values that I have today.
Great, thank you. Theo, more and more businesses now are very much focused on their purpose, and we see businesses make big impact. It's not just profits and sales and commercial value, but actually driving real purpose, driving real change. Are there any particular industries or any particular businesses that you're getting excited about that you feel are going to be game changers over the coming years?
This is an old cliche, and I think pandemic has put a little bit of a dampener on it as people's focus changes, because we really have adapted our focus to a very short-term focus at the moment. which is fine, and you have to do that sometimes. And we've made a great job of screwing up our planet over the past 100 odd years. So screwing it up for another 3 or 6 months is, while we deal with the ability to be alive, to go forward, is not the end of the world. But sooner rather than later, we need to pick that up again and deal with it. Because when you look at the damage that we are causing, this pandemic is only a small clue to what could possibly happen to us going forward. And it's only, so this is we should take this as a lesson about what could possibly happen to us if we don't deal with our environment in a lot more sympathetic way than we deal with it today. And people, I think that whole industry, from a business perspective, is in some ways a no-brainer, because it will be more and more relevant going forward.
Okay, thank you. And I think a lot of the entrepreneurs that are on the call today that are working within the environment will be really happy to hear that. I know as a bank, we have had a real commitment towards sustainability. And so it's really great to hear you sharing those views too. So Theo, I've got a couple of quick fire questions for you now. So they're pretty much yes, no answers, but these have all come from the audience. So the first thing is you've done business, you've done football, you've done TV, you know what's coming. Will you do politics?
I would be a terrible politician. You know, there was this ancient Greek philosopher, right? Some of you might know him, some of you might not know him. His name was Clintos Iswoudos. And he said, that's Clint Eastwood, for those of you who didn't pick that up on that. He said, a good man must know his limitations. And I subscribe to that. I would make an appalling politician, because I can't sit there, as I've been watching for the last 6 months, politicians on television, on BBC News, Sky News, all the other news channels, trying to defend the indefensible and people not roasting them. I mean, it's embarrassing. And I just go, you know, if it waddles like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. You know, there was one on this morning. I'm not going to get in there, but, you know, so I'd be a terrible politician.
Maybe that's what politicians need right now.
Well, we'll see. But is the public ready for it?
Possibly. So the next one is a comment, and I have to share this with you. One of our entrepreneurs have said that they love your painting on the back there. It's been Standouts. So there's a compliment there for the painting. We want to know the origins and if there's a story behind it.
Yes. It was painted by a guy called Paul Oz. So Paul, if you're listening in, and he did that, and it's signed by me, and he did it for Comic Relief, and he did 8 limited editions with red noses. That's not the red nose version, and which he auctioned off and raised a huge amount of money, and he kindly allowed me to buy that one. So that's Paul Oz. It was, we're going back now over 10 years, and Mrs. P decided it should go in the living room, so it sits there. So Paul Oz, well done.
Thank you. Next question: where do you get your inspiration from? So one of the things we've definitely heard, and we have categorically got a feel from, is that you are a very driven individual. Some of that drive was necessity, some of it was just seeing opportunities and knowing that you can turn things around. What inspires you now?
Injustice. I go nuts when I see injustice. And there's so much of it around the world at the moment. So that drives me, that inspires me. Maybe not so much in the business world, but inspires me in other areas. And as far as the business world is concerned, it's seeing other people do well, admiring those people. because that to me, it's so fulfilling and inspirational that I just want to emulate it. I want to try and be as good as they are and achieve as much as they are. And it's not from a sense of envy. It's from a sense of admiration. And every time I see somebody I know or somebody that I've mentored or nurtured do well, believe you me, that I get a huge kick. And it's not, some people say, oh, you just want to make more money, don't you? No, it's not. I don't need any more money. I've been very lucky for the last 15, 20 years. I could have packed up work. It's a scorecard. The money's a scorecard. It's a sense of success. But that's the sense of success in business. In other parts, what we talked about, whether there's injustice or environment or things like that, then there's other scorecards and other measures that turn me on, that I use and strive, that give me the energy.
Brilliant, thank you. So moving on to more things that inspire you, and we've touched on Small Business Sunday. I know we've got a number of winners that have joined the call today, and absolutely everybody has said such positive things. They've been so excited. What's the plans for Small Business Sunday? What can we look forward to in 2021?
Well, as you know, every year we have a Small Business Sunday conference, and we get thousands of our winners, and we've got just under 3,000 winners now of Small Business Sunday together. And we, it's a free to attend conference, and we get inspirational speakers, learnings, organizations like yourselves and others that come and talk to us to help small businesses. And the demographics of a Small Business Sunday winner is substantially female, not employing anything between 1 and 3 and 4 people. We got obviously ones bigger. Work premises over 50% working from home. So that's been going on for the 10 years now. So it's a really early adoption of this working environment that we now find ourselves in. And it's very much about self-help, actually having people to talk to, rely on in communities that are hubs, not just one central meeting a year, because they have regional meetings as well, people getting together. And it's not about me and what I can give them. I and my organization are catalysts. It's a non-for-profit organization. We are catalysts in helping them achieve for themselves. So we're not going to be able to do our conference this year, but this has gone so well, and we've been talking about having a virtual event. And we know the team are working, the SBS team are fairies, as I call them, because they make everything happen in the background, are working on it at the moment, and we'll probably have our event. It's going to be strange for me because I like to meet them and talk to them, and one thing you don't get in these events is the ability to see them. They see you. I leave those events, by the way, buzzing. I leave buzzing. They're normally held in the Midlands, probably not a good place to be at the moment. On my way home down to Surrey after an event, I am buzzing, just meeting those people and seeing the enthusiasm and the aspirations they have at the beginning of their journey. I'm coming to the end of my journey, and then my story's told. It might be a few more chapters, but pretty well told. Theirs is just beginning. How exciting is that? They've got it all to unfold before them. What I wouldn't give to be back in that position. So so I'm going to miss that very much. But we will be. I know the team are in touch regularly, and we will have an event again during the year, probably virtual.
Yeah. And Theo, we're supporting thousands of entrepreneurs right across the country. So anytime you want to pop in and have a chat with one of those entrepreneurs, we're doing conversation cafes every week up and down the country. And I know we'd love to have you. So if you feel like you want to just sit and hang out with a bunch of entrepreneurs, let us know.
Well, I will do. And I'm going to take you up on that because I am in dire need.
Good. We will send you some details. Well, we'll
Please
send them to your team, and
send
we'll
it
definitely have you
to
join one of our.
the SPS fairies, and they'll get me there for my own good.
Brilliant. No, it's and you're absolutely right. Being surrounded by people that are doing amazing stuff, have a can-do attitude, make things happen. It's very uplifting. It's very inspiring, and we're delighted to be a part of that as well. So going back to the questions, and I'm just going to address the audience for a second. I know there's loads and loads of questions coming in. We've got 7 minutes left. What I'm trying to do is focus on the questions where you can specifically get the answers from Theo. Some of the questions that you've put through, take it back to your community, take it to your hub, take it to your coaching sessions. But I'm looking at the questions that are specifically for Theo. So on that note, Theo, next question is, you've spent so much time supporting small businesses and you absolutely value those early days, that almost that honeymoon period. But there's definitely some challenges for small businesses, in particular when it comes to payment terms, winning larger contracts, being able to fulfill deals. What's your top tips for entrepreneurs that are at the early stage that are perhaps just feeling that they're not able to get the reach that they need, or they're still a little bit too small to nail the big contracts? Is there anything in particular they can do to make that switch?
Well, number one, I wouldn't lower my aspirations, because that's what drives you. That's a dream. That big one is a dream that we've all looked for as small businesses. I started as a small business. I promise you, whilst I never actually got the big one, that was the one that drove me. But I got lots and lots of small ones on the way. And so do not lower your aspirations at all. There's lately been difficult times, and still are difficult times. Credit insurance is a nightmare at the moment, to get credit insurance. Government, I've talked about it, they've enacted some form of legislation, but they haven't actually implemented it. That does make it difficult for small businesses to buy things and then be able to sell them. Credit facilities, very difficult. Payment terms. We have a principle within our organization that we have different types of payment terms for small businesses and large businesses, because we have to survive as well. So it's not because we're a medium-sized family business. That's what we are. But we have lots of suppliers that are small businesses, and we have some suppliers that are huge public businesses with deep pockets and shareholders with huge pockets, and banking facilities are undrawn. So we don't mind taking credit from them. But from small suppliers, we have different rules. And I think that's important. And that's something, again, government could pick up on and try and make that more relevant to all businesses. Make sure that people, 60 days is a long time to wait for payment. It's a long, long time to wait for payment. To be honest with you, I talked about earlier about balancing my books, and they weren't always balanced. 30 days sometimes is difficult, but unless you get paid bang on. So these are all difficult things that we've got to take on board. But I do feel that the change is coming, and was coming prior to pandemic. The change is coming. We are a lot more understanding now of the pressures and the issues faced by small businesses, and it shouldn't be beyond our ability as responsible, sustainable businesses to deal with that. In fact, compared to the other challenges that we're going to face in that area, this should be the least of our problems.
Great, thank you. So just final questions, and we have to spend a little bit of time talking about Dragon's Den. So these are quick questions. The first one is, do you have a favorite dragon?
Oh, wow, that's not fair.
You get asked if we have a favorite entrepreneur all the time. So,
well, I suppose that the person I'm closest to is Deborah. So she's probably the closest one, and we still see each other quite very regularly, do things together. So yeah, in fact, in fairness, she was always the brightest anyway. And I'd never tell that to her face. She's always probably the best as well, but I would never say that to her face. No, so yeah, so Deborah, I suppose, will be my number one choice.
Brilliant. And will you go back?
Well, I did the last part of the last series, which was fun to go back after an absence of 6 years, which was very, very strange. Although I did have an altercation with Deborah, because the minute I left, she took over my seat, that middle seat. So, of course, when I went back, I got in there early as a surprise to everybody and sat in my seat. Of course, she came on set, and there was I, suited and booted, sitting in my old seat. And I had my mobile phone going because I knew the reaction I'd get. And as much as we're really great friends, I've got it on my video. I might even put it, do you know, I am tempted to put it on social media one day. There she was, absolutely strode right across the floor over to me. And without a hello, how are you, a kiss, a hug, started dragging me off the chair. Yes, that's Deborah Meaden for you.
And is it weird that we could actually picture that? I can see that happening.
She was wearing red. I can see it quite clearly, even though it's quite frightening.
Brilliant. Theo, thank you so much for all your time today. You've answered so many questions so patiently and given us a real insight into your world. Definitely been inspirational, and I'm glad I've had my camera off because I've been chuckling away a fair few times as well. Gordon, any final requests to you? And then what I will do is we'll bring up the feedback screen so that people can give us their feedback.
So I just a massive thank you. And you know, I'm buzzing, to use your phrase, Theo. I know that everybody else in the call will be. I'm not in the slightest bit surprised about that though, because I knew exactly what to expect. Just the resilience, the passion. I love some of the comments and tips around delivery and outputs and outcomes and value add. And I think what you've done today is you've shared a legacy of what you've learned, not what you've earned. And I think that's just wonderful, Theo. And I know that's exactly the person that you are. And also doing that with a really bad back. So, you know, you never know these days what can happen. So to do that and kind of stand and sit for about an hour, I know how difficult that is when you're in pain. So thanks for doing that. Don't get the Hoover out, and I'll give you a buzz soon. Thanks, Theo.
Guys, thank you very much for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. The back has stood up. Mrs. P hasn't started the hoovering yet. I'll probably, you know, that's a problem being at home. She'll probably leave it outside and say, "Here you go. This is now your job." But it's been a pleasure to talk to you as always. And you know, we're all incredibly passionate about business, especially small business. For me, I've never moved away from that. That's always been my passion, my desire, my drive. And as I said to you earlier, there's nothing better than being with aspiring entrepreneurs. It's small businesses, irrespective of age. They know whether they're young, old. It's their first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth venture. You know, just the excitement of them looking forward to achieving a goal, an aim, an ambition, and a dream. I mean, it's an amazing feeling.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Theo.
So much. And a massive thank you to all the audience members that have joined us today. We really appreciate your time. I know that there's been many questions we've not been able to answer, so apologies for that, but I'm sure you'll agree this has been a really great session. We've loved having you all here. Thank you.